Welcome to the Iasa 24-hour e-summit. And this is 24 hours of architecture, only architecture, all types of architecture, business, information, infrastructure, software, solution, enterprise, whatever you call architecture, we've got it. And I'm really excited about today's lineup. We have amazing speakers from all over the world. I'm even more excited about the format because we get to do this for free. We get to bring architects together. So if you're on the call, keep in mind, we're always looking for more presenters. But mostly I'm excited because we get 24 hours of architecture. So I'm going to be listening and speaking. Today, I'm going to have to hurry. For those of you who've heard me present, you know that I could talk about this for all 24 hours and probably never get bored. So I'm going to have to hurry because I want you to be able to ask questions, etc. As Michael said, we will be taking questions. You can ask questions at any time. Just type them into the question or chat window, and I will answer them, or Michael or one of the other staff will answer them. Now today, we're going to talk about a big topic. I wanted to kick us off with something that wasn't the same old story. A lot of us go to a lot of conferences. We go to a lot of places. We read a lot. We talk to other architects. We talk to developers. We talk to IT management, and we end up talking a lot about the same thing. What is architecture? What is digital transformation? What is the future of IoT? What do I need to learn to be able to use Angular well? How do I do a business model canvas? We talk a lot about the details. And that's important because it helps us do our job day in and day out. But today I wanted to challenge you, since I'm starting us off, I wanted to challenge you to think a little bigger, a little longer, a little more, a little deeper about the nature of our profession and us as a group. And as I started to sort of challenge myself to write this presentation, I started thinking about over the last 15 years. So Iasa is 15 years old. I have been meeting with architects, talking with architects, thinking about architects all 15 years. And over and over again, I bump into the same concept, which is if we were to function as a profession, if we were to function as a unified group of people, what would that look like? How would the world be different? And that's what today is about. I want to talk to you about what the world will look like in 10 years, what the world will feel like in 15 years, and what our place in that fabric should be, could be, and hopefully will be. That is going to require a lot of work, it's going to require a lot of thinking, and it's going to require a lot of shared investment, contribution, writing, participating. And so I can ask that of you, and I can only hope that you will join me in carving out the architect's place in transformation of business and society. So we're going to talk a little bit about the future. We're going to take a future look. Now, I am Paul Price. I am the CEO of Iasa. I founded it 15 years ago in February, and I speak, I teach, I write. I'm a father. I'm most definitely a nerd and a technologist. I'm a cook. I'm a scuba diver, a snow skier, and all-around aficionado of anything experiential. And a big part of the reason I like architecture so much is because you can't do it if you don't experience it. You can learn the techniques, you can study the tools, but living it and breathing it is a completely different ball of wax. So that's who I am. Before I did Iasa, I was a chief architect for Dell. I was chief architect for Sears and, the Sears point of sale replacement for North America. I've also been in small product companies and consultants and a whole host of other things. So I've seen a lot of this over the last 17 to 20 years, and I still believe that architects are the key to unlocking our digital future. Now, I'm not going to offer you a bunch of light, and I'm not going to offer you a bunch of sunshine. It is not a pretty space in some ways right now. Architects are disjoint, we are disconnected, and we do not function as a profession. And none of IT really functions as a profession. And the world has sort of given us a pass on that, in the sense that most of technology is not controlled outside of the contract. It has not entered the sort of societal compact or relationship that other professions have. So if you think about medicine, you can't practice medicine if you don't have a license. Building architecture, accounting, even your hairdresser, the person who cuts your hair, requires more education than the person who codes your 401k or your investment portfolio that controls your entire financial future, much less your health insurance or the technology that controls the tools during surgery. Airplanes, all the software and technology we use are coded by the least and the cheapest labor, the least skilled and the cheapest labor that the US or the other big companies can get their hands on. It's a bit of a scary world. Now, I'm telling you, that can easily change. And I don't mean in 200 years, I mean today, because it has to. And this is what we're seeing over the last 10 years, is that EA as a traditional design function, as a big think, big picture, draw a lot of diagrams function, is dead. And the reason is because the world has changed. So we're going to talk a lot today about the notion of future, society, and business, and how those are changing, and whether the world, and I don't mean just technologists and IT people, I mean the world is ready for it. And what our role as technologists has to become. Now, I want you to think briefly about that. For the last 20 to 50 to 60 years, finance and sales and marketing have dominated business and society. Up until now, we have relied on sales, marketing, and finance to control most businesses. Ever since the advent of the secondary and tertiary markets, i.e. the stock market, finance has been the lingua franca of business and society. But that's changing. And it's changing in a very big and a very fast way. All you have to do is think about blockchain and its impact on currencies, and you can get there very quickly. How do we as technologists prepare for 10 years from now? How do we prepare our businesses for them? How do we prepare our CEOs? How do we prepare our salespeople? How do we prepare our operations people? How do we prepare our janitors? And there's a whole lot of questions about the future of work. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about. How do we start to function as business people and decision makers or owners instead of just facilitators? If you think about our common language in IT as technologists or in the entire world of technology, we have always talked about, quote, the business. Now, the business was always seen as owners. They owned the solution, and we were the service providers. Now we are entering a world where our owners don't know what they're doing. They don't have a clue about how to deal with technology change. These are not people who are technologists. I mean, if you think about your life, many of us spent decades just understanding technology, just keeping up with it. Now, contrast that to your average business owner who has spent their life in sales or in product development or in marketing or operations or finance or HR or any number of other roles. And think about their relation with the world today and what's changing and what's happening in that world. I like to say owners are not born, they're burned. What we think about, what we do as owners, I run a company. It is a non-profit company for the betterment of IT and enterprise architecture around the world. And I tell you what, this is as true as it can possibly be. To own something doesn't mean that you have some innate ability to own things. To deliver, to be in charge, to lead is about being burned. It's about living the lessons and learning from them, and then leading from that experience. And we have a lot of stuff going on. We have hundreds of thousands of great ideas and trends being born every day in our society and in technology. And it's not just me. I'm not the only one who says this is changing the world. Obviously, you hear this everywhere. We like to quote Bill because, you know, he's, well, Bill Gates. And even he says information technology and business are inextricably interwoven. And no one can move a business forward without technology as strategy and technology as a fundamental driver for business growth. So what do we do about this? There's so much stuff going on. There's so much excitement. How would you think about IoT and infrastructure and the change of the world? Now, we're moving into a time in society when the world doesn't just get recognized and interacted with by humans, but actually recognizes us and interacts with us. What will it be like when every road is populated by self-driving cars, is filled with sensors, is filled with data coming in, both visual data from cameras as well as sensor data from the roads themselves, when buildings are smart, when the city itself is smart, for those of you studying smart cities and looking into this. And this isn't just a small thing. This is everything. What will happen when your building knows you're there? How does your business change in a world where everything is a surface and everything is a technology source, is an IP address, is connected? So if you sell hamburgers, how does that change your world? If you sell t-shirts, how does that change your world? If you provide insurance, how does that change your world? And then let's just focus in on that. When the doctor can know, your doctor can know at any given second your blood sugar, your EEG, your blood pressure, the chemicals in your bloodstream, what will medicine look like when that data is constantly available? When your interaction points with the world, for example, the way you drive, or what part of the world you're in. I live in Amsterdam. I like to go on wave runners and go snow skiing. What does my life insurance policy look like when the insurance company itself knows that I am on a double diamond, which is the hardest, scariest, whatever, in the middle of Colorado? What will the insurance company, what happens to my insurance rate when I start making those decisions and the company knows about it? So we have to consider all of these permutations. What happens with the infrastructure of our world, and how does it change our business model? What happens when everything is a device? When devices themselves, you know, we're technologists. We tend to think of devices. I have 3 servers at home. I have 5 Raspberry Pis. I have 2 TVs. I have a cell phone, a tablet. I have all of these devices that belong to me. Now, what happens when device disappears? What happens when every wall or glass surface is a device? What happens when every notepad is a device? And that device customizes itself to its user. So you hand me your phone, and it's no longer your phone, it's my phone. The phone recognizes me immediately. Anybody keeping up with Google will know that our phones are very, very close to being able to tell everything that's going on around us. What happens when you hand me your phone so that I can make a call And the entire operating system is replaced with my phone operating system, my preferred background, my phone numbers, my preferences, my bookmarks. And the moment I hand it back to you, that disappears and yours come back. We won't have devices anymore that belong to us. We'll have devices that belong to everyone. What about digital assistants and digital actors? Would you trust, and this is something critical, would you trust a digital assistant to book a flight, hotel, and restaurant for you without your approval, spending your money on it? Your digital assistant knows that you've been wanting to go to Borneo for your whole life and sees an opportunity on your next vacation and says there's a great ticket price, there's a great hotel, and there's some restaurants that I know he would like or she would like, so I'm going to buy those with his credit card right now. What do we do in business when we interact with each other on a technical basis, but we do not do so on a physical one? I have never once spoken with Uber as a company. I've never once spoken with Airbnb as a company. My company deals with those organizations and has never interacted with them physically as well. So Iasa does business with Airbnb and with airlines and with Uber and does not interact with them as a company. We simply do digital transactions, and many of those are automated. What happens when businesses decide to do deals but no human being was involved in the deal making? What happens to liability, to insurance, to, the entire structure of contract will fundamentally change. And folks, in case you're wondering, how many of you have dealt with a user of one of your systems recently, or a business partner of one of your projects recently, who literally can barely turn their computer on? And I can hear you laughing, even though I can't hear you laughing. Because it's true. We all deal with these people who are like, oh, I just don't understand that technology stuff. How are they going to deal with this world? And this is why I like to say, owners are not born, they're burned. And we have been through the fire. The entire world is changing. We have digital lives now. Bullying is more common in the digital landscape than it is in the physical one now, which is a negative example. But there are many positive ones. Even something as simple as play has fundamentally changed. How many of you have kids that you literally hand a tablet to, and they are twice as happy as when you take them to the park? I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, and it's not my position to comment on that. But the question is, how does life and play change in a digital world? I'm an online gamer. The things we live for, the things we do that we look forward to, are becoming as much digital as they are analog. Again, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. What about money? The nature of money is changing. Blockchain, digital currencies, almost every country in the world has a digital agenda for currencies right now. So what do we do, and what do our businesses do when money no longer exists? More importantly, what does society do? What do homeless people do in a world without money? And the reason I bring these things up is because they are both an opportunity as well as a challenge to humanity. More people meet online and fall in love than but a significant number of people meet online. I actually don't know the stat. I would love to say more people meet online and fall in love, but that's not true, because still the vast majority of humans don't even have a cell phone yet. We still have 3.5 to 4 billion people that don't have an IP address. Long way to go. But in the post-industrial and most importantly post-information societies, love has become as much digital as it is analog, as it is physical. So The nature of the world is changing. The nature of relationships are changing, not just business. And in all of this, the question becomes, where are we? Where do we fit? What do we do? How do we function in society? Now, let me put this in a simple way. How many of you think that your Congress, your legislative branch of your government, populated by intelligent and well-meaning civil servants, should be responsible for health policy versus what doctors think of health policy? And this question starts to illuminate the world as we're about to know it, in the sense that technologists need a role in more than just the questions of implementation. We need to have a role in the questions of society. Manufacturing jobs lost to technology in the U.S., 4 million. 47% of all jobs will be automated by 2034, and no government is prepared. How do we prepare for a jobless world? For a group of people that have enough but don't have anything to do. It's the economy of abundance brought upon us by technology. We are entering into a notion where getting paid to be alive is actually a real concept. You were born, therefore you are being paid to live. If money is even important in this world, in a jobless life. What is the nature of trade in a world where everybody has enough to eat, has a place to stay, and is able to fulfill their basic needs and desires, including relationships and care, without a job? What is the nature of trade? The nature of creativity? Does, for example, art become the new medium of value? Does individuality itself become the point of every existence? And if so, how do we function and create a world? I was just teaching a class in a municipal government in Sweden, the city government in Sweden. And one of the core components of Iasa's training is to understand the trade-off analysis between one or more technology directions. And someone raised their hand in class and said, wait a second, if we do that project instead of this project with this technology, then that means we won't be able to provide the care that we currently do to the elderly. But this project is about providing new types of care to children. So we have to make a decision about technology that actually fundamentally changes whether or not older people or younger people will receive more attention. We have to actually make decisions about values, not about just .NET versus Java or, Mule ESB versus BizTalk. And I said exactly. And that's what this is about. What is your role? And we need to make this real, not just pie in the sky. This isn't 10 years from now. This is today. Right? This is what you're going back to work to do. And all the talks you're going to hear today are about this interaction. Because regular people don't trust technology. Regular folks think that technology is somehow out to get them. And unless technologists stand up and start to make a connection for regular people between their cell phone, their identity, their security, and their children's safety, we are in trouble because regular people are afraid. And that means your business partners too, not just this grand societal vision. I'm talking about your salesperson that you're interacting with working on your CRM system is terrified that the CRM system is going to put them out of business. That we're not going to need them anymore. And by the way, that's not an irrational fear. Online commerce has replaced more salespeople than anything else. In fact, we don't like to deal with commerce and salespeople anymore because we would prefer to just buy it online. So how does trust work in a technology-driven society? What does education and the next generation look like? We always talk about the next generation like they're all going to be, we talk about this like programming for everyone, girls who code or kids who code and all this stuff. I have a 17-year-old daughter, and I will tell you, she hates technology, hates it. She's an artist. She wants a notepad, and every once in a while she wants to check her messages on her phone, but that's about it. And she browses Pinterest. That's it. 2 apps is the grand total of her world outside of watching Netflix. But she prefers for me to set that up. So what does her life look like in a world driven by technology when the average person just simply doesn't like it? They don't like it. It boils down to there are people who like technology and there are people who don't. And we pretend that everybody's going to become someone who likes it. But most importantly, the question I have for you is, what are we doing? How are we making choices and structuring our relationship with society? How are you participating? And I'm going to make this a little personal. How are you participating in the impact of the technology that you're working on the people whose lives it influences? And many of you work at some of the largest companies of the world, and you work on deeply important projects. And maybe they don't feel important, but an insurance app on your phone can be the difference between your daughter getting a surgery or not. And I need you to start thinking about, what do we do and who will benefit from technology as the fundamental interaction and management of all business and all society everywhere? What happens when wealth is no longer required? We tend to think, I'm an American, and Americans tend to think of wealth as happiness. Like, if I'm wealthy, I'm happy. It's not true, but it's just something that's just baked into us a little bit. Not all Americans, obviously, but there is an element of that in our society. What happens when wealth is no longer unequally distributed, when wealth is not required, when wealth is just an option? I could be wealthy if I thought about it, but I really just want to draw all the time. How do we lead the wealthy instead of the wealthy leading us? When finance is no longer king, wealth becomes an option to your life as opposed to a requirement for happiness. What happens in that world? I live in Europe, and now I've moved to Amsterdam, and I love it here because in many ways, wealth is an option. The average person has an okay life. I'm going to eat some cheese. I'm going to drink some wine. I'm going to go out and play soccer, football, excuse me. So how do we think about wealth in a technology-driven society? Now, nearly half of the world's population currently live on less than $2.50 a day. That's more than 3 billion people. What are they going to do in a technology-driven society? Because most of us in our cushy little tech jobs, making $50,000 to $150,000 a year, don't really identify with the homeless very well. What is our job going to be as technologists? How are we going to provide them with the new medium of survival? Does every homeless person get a cell phone? So that, how do I even drop coins in someone's music box walking along the street because they're playing the guitar really well when there's no coins? Am I just going to flick my phone at them? What if they don't have a phone? What if they can't afford one? I can't buy a cell phone for $2.50. $2.50 times 365, I still can't buy a cell phone. Okay, I can buy the cell phone, but I can't eat. I can't eat on $2.50. So we've got some other questions there. Is abundance going to remove barriers or create them? If removal of work is as a medium of value, what happens to poverty? If nobody works, or half the people in the world don't work, then what is the medium of value? We come back to that over and over again. What resources can we have? Where do they go? How is healthcare paid for? How is anything paid for? And I want you to be thinking about this because the world needs you to think about this. So imagine, I bet if I were able to do a survey right now and ask in any family gathering, if something goes wrong with the Wi-Fi, how many of you are the person that is tagged as the family person, because you're an IT or you're a technologist, to go fix it, to go figure it out? There's probably two, in a large family gathering, there's probably 2, 3 of you now. And everybody else is going like, I don't know. So if they're terrified of setting up Wi-Fi, how the hell are they going to deal with the fact that there will be no privacy in 10 to 20 years? None. Literally every moment of your life will be recorded by a device. Every second, every hour, every mistake. You know, in college, I went out with friends. I drank a whole lot because I was just, 21, woohoo, and did some, embarrassing things that I would definitely not want the person giving me my interview for my first job to see, except for we're going into a world where every aspect of your life will be available to view, to know by anyone who wants to. And there may or may not be any way to stop that. So as technologists, what do we need to, what do our laws need to look like? How do we lead when no one else even understands that yet? We're one of the few groups in the world that know this is coming. How do we make privacy central to human interaction? I cannot use your private information in any way that would damage you. And how do we make that central to our laws, to our cultural interactions, and to our human norms? 70%, excuse me, excuse me guys, let me get a sip of water here. 70% of students report seeing frequent bullying online. Now, in some ways, bullying online is harder than being bullied in person. Being bullied in person, and I was a dork as a kid. I guess I'm a dork now. I was a dork as a kid. So I was bullied. But in some ways, it was a very personal thing, right? It was like, Joe, the football jock, didn't like me because I was smart. So he decided that he would, push me around a little. Well, I didn't take well to that, but that's a different thing. But in some ways, that was a very personal thing, right? It was just Joe bullying me. But what about now? What about when somebody calls you fat in front of every single one of your friends? What about when somebody calls you ugly or tells you you're a loser and everyone you know can see that? Have you personalized that? It's tough. In some ways, it's like having the picture of Joe bullying me put on the billboard in front of my school as everyone drove in. Now, that would have hurt a lot more than Joe pushing me around. Where do we need to be? And this is part of what I'm trying to get you to think like, because just these societal things are not the only piece that we have to think of. This affects every business. If you look at the way business model generation works, customer journey maps, empathy maps, all of these impact the way your customers purchase or interact with your system. If I don't trust technology, then I'm not going to buy from you online, and I'm not going to buy from you on a phone. If I don't trust you as an organization and the technology you use, Target and Home Depot, then what am I going to do when it comes time to give you my information that you need to be successful in your machine learning, digital business intelligence, and others? What happens to identity in this world? Who are we? How do I manage my information when I don't know how Facebook is using it and they don't have to tell me? How do I think about the changes in identity management? Many of you are getting ready for GDPR, and identity and privacy are at the central tenet of that. And many of you will be working on GDPR projects for the next 2 to 5 years, getting data that is supposed to be private in the right places so that in Europe, your customers can be sure that you're not abusing their privacy or their identity and using that information in the wrong way. What about digital war? The next big war will be digital, and we're not ready for it. What happens with criminals? Because this one I like, actually, because I do a lot of, a friend of mine, Gar McCrusta, which many of you would have heard speak, one of the top thought leaders in business model generation for technologists. And I talk about this, and that is, what does crime look like in 10 years? Because, you know, we've all been victim of some kind of crime, digital crime, whether that's a Trojan or another virus put on our computer, somebody stole our identity, somebody stole a credit card number, somebody abused our accounts, somebody, you know, stole money from us, somebody bullied us, whatever. You know, the criminal, we talk about criminals like they're all sort of, I don't know, like they're all street thugs, you know, they've all got switchblades and they're trying to steal our wallet. But you know, the criminal chains of the world, and one of the things that Gar and I do is actually a business model canvas for a crime ring. And we do it to highlight a point, which is that everything has a business model. But the other side of that is criminals aren't stupid. They're not all idiots that have, you know, that are just trying to steal a couple of coins from your pocket. There are criminal masterminds that are hiring architects. You know, I know some of you are thinking about, oh, geez, could I actually get a job as an architect for like a criminal mastermind ring? Because they're hiring. I don't think you'd like the benefit or the exit strategy. But the point is, what happens to crime and how do we fight it when the vast majority of people fighting crime don't understand technology? What about religion? Spirituality. You know, there's a really funny thing in the world. Just you can Google the notion that Google is God, and I don't get into religious talk, but it's an interesting notion because Google actually meets at least 2 of the requirements for a deity: omnipresent and omniscient. It means it's everywhere and it knows basically everything. How many of you have been at the dinner and somebody said, where did the word, you know, etymology actually come from? And so you look it up on Google. Nobody at the party knew that. Just Google knows it. So what happens to spirit and belief and our physical and spiritual relationship with the universe in a digital world? Are we going to be dealing with digital gods soon? So leadership in a changing world. I want you to think about this because this is where I'm really pushing you towards. I want you to think about what your position in society and in your business. And to make this very real, I want to be very clear. While I'm talking about big ideas, the implementation of these ideas is not tomorrow. It's not 10 years from now. It's literally Thursday, which is tomorrow. Like not tomorrow, like the 10-year version. Tomorrow as in when you go back to work, look at what your company is doing. Look at who is in charge and what their skills are and their preparedness for a true digital world. Now, if you think about leadership in history and the way and the groups of people that led the world, initially we had these sort of city-states form up in history, right? So we have big populations, nomadic, people are settling down in these little villages, and somebody says, I want to be king. And in many ways, the warrior and the government, the king, took over and ran the state. Now, ultimately, as we populated those city-states and they became a little more stable, we integrated religion into our environment. And in that phase of human history, or a couple thousand years there, it was, in fact, organized religion that controlled everything. At some point, though, we switched to industry. Somewhere around the 16 to 1800s, we realized we could make money by selling things and by buying things and reselling them and owning them. And all of a sudden, the world changed. And all of a sudden, business was in charge. Now, business back then was partially finance, but mostly it was operations, sales, marketing, and the traditional business unit. And somewhere in the 1900s, we invented the secondary market. We actually made money by betting on the companies that would sell stuff that was good. And when that happened, finance took over. And it would be my argument that even though governments have power and religions have power and all of that's there, that in truth, financial professionals control the world. If you think about 2007 and 2008 and how shitty a time that was, you'll understand exactly what I mean. What happens next time? In the next 10 years, guess who's in charge? Not just of business, but of society at large, of all things, healthcare for poor people. And that person is you, me, the people who may know how to code, may not. Maybe we're in data storage. Maybe we're in business intelligence. Maybe we're in infrastructure or, programming or whatnot. But ultimately, the technologists of the world are being handed the control stick. And we're not ready. So how do we prepare? The future's coming, so who's going to be your leader? Not me. I mean, I'm happy to give you my opinion and do my best to bring together the architect profession, but the profession itself has to be led by you. We have to have a voice in society. We have to tell people, hey, by the way, our government wastes money on technology. They do contracts that are stupid. We make that case with defense contracts and other kinds of contracts, but technologists themselves are not writing the editorials. We're not leading our city government. We're not leading our state government, and we're not leading our federal government. So how do we prepare? And more importantly, I mean, in some ways, more realistically at least, how do you get ready at your current company? How involved are you in your digital transformation strategy? We need to follow a set of leaders. Now, right now, our leaders, quite frankly, are vendors. And I love our vendors. We have brilliant people doing amazing things. But ultimately, Microsoft, IBM, Wipro, Google, ultimately they want to sell the world something. What do the technologists as practitioners think? Not as representatives of the Google, Microsoft, IBM, Wipro, Infosys, Capgemini family and business plan think, but what do you think? Where should identity be stored? And how much control should your aunt or your uncle have over that? And how did they learn to control it? What is your next customer? What is your next digital business model? And this is where we get into the interesting things about IDABOC 3 is we start talking a lot about digital business models and what they look like. Wow, Michael, you could have interrupted me and told me the slides never changed. So just so you know, there were slides that went along with this entire thing, just so you can see. Pretty slides. I didn't realize I was on pause. So ultimately, what does this world look like where technologists have to become leaders? So that being said, I am going to predict a couple of things. I'm going to predict that architecture and decision rights in this new world are becoming synonymous. We talk about EA is dead, and the truth is that old EA is dead. This whole big think, architecting the enterprise concept, engineering the enterprise concept is done. I have talked to 20 CIOs in the last year and 20 other executives who say, I just don't need people like that. You know what I need? I need people who understand my digital strategy and my go-to-business plan, and who are willing to buy in and take a big bite and put their ass on the line and be willing to be fired if they get it wrong, because that's what owners do. We'll go back to that previous concept. Owners are not born, they're burned. Architects without digital skills and value will fail, always. If you have a business architecture initiative and it is populated by wonderful, brilliant business people from the business, and they call themselves business architects now, in 2 years, it will be gone. Sorry, it's just true. I have seen it 50 times, and I will see it 50 more. If you don't have digital skills, you are not an architect. I didn't say you have to spend every day coding. Most of the business architects that I respect, and there are hundreds, don't code every day, but they have deep and lifelong digital skills. And they credit those skills with keeping them in their position in business architecture. So I didn't say architects have to be about IT. I said architects have to be about digital transformation. That is our job. That is our whole goal. Our whole goal is to change people to a new digital business model, or transform their organization into a digitally driven, customer-focused, digital employee-based operation with true strategy to execution excellence. Not an easy sentence to say, but absolutely true. So ultimately, and this is, by the way, the new look of the IDA box. In June, July-ish, you will be able to click on all of these things, download templates, and do all sorts of wonderful IDA box-y stuff. We must reduce our project coverage. We've got to get out of the governance role. Architects suck at governance. Governance is a cross-organizational, a cross-functional responsibility. Architects, as governance-focused, are about backwards-looking people. Digital transformation is about forwards-looking people. We've got to get governed and not be the arm of governance. It has killed us in the last 10 years, and it is one of the key reasons why enterprise architecture is dying as it used to be. Architecture must never be about a document. If your concept of architecture is, what template do I have to fill out, you're not an architect. Architecture is about change. It is about being in the middle of a stakeholder community. I like to say architecture never happens at your desk. It always happens at someone else's. Architects must be hired on an experience-based certification. Okay, by the way, folks, it's just stupid the way we hire IT people. Quite frankly, if you hire doctors the way you hire IT people, all of us would be dead. Because we would hire people who are not qualified. You would never go see a surgeon that isn't board certified. It would never even occur to you. And yet, you will hire an IT architect that is just a resume. Oh, of course I've done that. Yes, I'm quite good. And they will lie to your face. We would never hire in any other profession the way we do in IT. Oh, let's see. What's the cheapest possible surgeon I can get? Okay, 55 cents an hour. Perfect. Let's go with that one. Many of you are laughing because it never occurred to you that we hire the cheapest, least skilled labor to do the most important things in society today. And I know you're frustrated because many of you feel the same thing. You, by the way, have the chance to change that. So if you're laughing, if you agree with that, sometime in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you're going to be responsible for hiring people. Hire experientially certified ones. And I don't mean the CITA S, the CITA A. That's a test. I'm not talking about you took an exam. I'm talking about people that are board certified the way doctors are board certified. People who have had to prove they're good and that have had to prove they don't kill patients. If you don't do it for programmers, at least do it for architects. Move towards innovation. Be known for ideas, be known for leadership. If you aren't leading, you're following. Keep in mind, you can start acting like an owner today. You don't have to be just a politician. You don't just have to be a facilitator. Keep in mind your brand and never stop making things. If you find yourself I am in a Visio design document world where I'm living over in a corner and all I do is create sketches, yeah, get back into building things.